Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Bull. A very interesting episode where we have like the head guy, James, at a corporation, ended up dying after he, had happy times with his significant other. It ended up seeming like it was a heart attack, but then it was like a nitroglycerin overdose. Side note, that actor who plays James, like, seen him in so many things, don't know his name, but he's just one of those familiar actors. Also, the actor who plays his brother, Kevin, I've seen him in some things. I think the thing that kind of comes to my head most, it's like, it's going to be kind of a tangent of a thought, but it's like, he was one of Walt on Longmire, the TV show. He was one of Walt's deputies at one point in time, but then he left, so they kind of had a weird relationship, but they were still tight in certain regards. Like, he's popped up in the show a few times, but I think it's that. And I kept wondering, the actress who played Carolyn, well, obviously she had many different identities and stuff, but I was like, why do I recognize her? And I think I've seen her a few things, but I think the thing that clicks in my head the most is like Daniel Day Kim on his character on Hawaii Five-0. She played his ex-wife that they eventually got back together, and spoiler alert, her character dies. That was a couple years ago, so I feel like it's not that big of a deal, but it kind of is, so I do apologize. But just that's how the tangents in my brain work, that they kind of correlate like that, because I'm terrible with names and I didn't look this up ahead of time. But nevertheless, so it's interesting because at first Kevin came to them being like, hey guys, I'm gonna pay you like $1 million. I want the doctor who overprescribed my brother this medication to kind of basically run out of business so they don't end up doing this to someone else. I mean, it's like, you're grieving right now, you just lost your brother, so it's like, obviously you kind of get a little vengeful in that regard, especially as you find out, like, potentially, because in that situation you probably need someone to blame, and especially there potentially being someone to blame. There's also the ME. The person that Tact ended up getting to examine the body, it turns out to be, I could be wrong about this, like, that actress popped up in season 1 of The Sinner. She's that main cop that shows up later on that kind of, like, busts Harry's chops about the whole, like, Cora situation. But I'm fairly certain, and I could be wrong, maybe they just look similar, but I'm fairly certain that's the same actress who pops up in season 4 of The Blacklist. She plays a younger Kate, aka Mr. Kaplan, which is interesting if that is the case, and I'm not just mixing up actresses. If that is the case, the actress who plays, Kate, present day, and more often than not, you saw as Kate on The Blacklist, has popped up on Bull as like a judge. She's actually popped up like 2 or 3 times, so it's kind of interesting if that ends up in it's just a whole thing. I also liked her being like a little snippy about it too. It's just kind of like, it's like, oh, you got paid quite a bit of money by these guys, Bull, Kevin, and Benny to do this examination. She's like, yeah, just like your defendant paid you a lot of money to ask me these questions. And you have Benny kind of looking at Bull with a smile on his face like, yeah, look at her, snap. I kind of like that aspect of her being like that too. I thought that was kind of pretty neat. But what made this case really interesting is that you kind of knew from the beginning who it was, that Carolyn was this Black Widow. Because every time she pop up, I'm like, I kept being like, the first thing that came to my mind, like music, I was like, what would that music technically be counted as? Like, is that like some femme fatale music? But then I was like, some noir music? But it's like, I think femme fatale falls under the category, like, could be an aspect of a noir story. So, I mean, I guess it kind of fits either way, because it was just like a very specific song that they'd be like, it also, like, listening to that music, for whatever reason, it made me think of Twin Peaks. I don't know why. For whatever reason, it made me think of Twin Peaks. But, like, the fact of the matter is, it's like, oh, all these accidents that happen around you, and it's like, she's a Black Widow. Interesting development in that regard. Because they made such a point of her being like, he's like, I'm not going to marry you. She's like, and I'm not going to marry you either. I'm just going to love you to death. And it's like, that should have been the key sign right there, because I was like, she poisoned him or something, didn't she? Because I figured she did something to his nitroglycerin, like the actual pill, but it's like, no, apparently she put it in his lotion, which is kind of super sad, because it's like, he's a germaphobe, so he's always, not lotion, his sanitizer, but because he's a germaphobe, he's always going to keep using it. And apparently rubbing it into your hands actually, because it's a very potent ointment, and so rubbing it in like the way he would sanitizer makes it even that much more potent. So it just took that one sanitizer combined with his nitroglycerin to kind of kill him, and that was kind of a shame in the grand scheme of things. I also love this episode brought up the fact is that Taylor, like for one, like, you know, Bull was like, and, you know, here's Chunk stepping in for Benny. And also there's his, what was his associate counsel or whatever. And then it's like Taylor's playing a lawyer. And then even have Chunk kind of turning to her and she just kind of straight face being like, yeah, this is happening. And then you kind of got Marissa kind of making a face like, wait, what? Okay. And then later on, it's like, should we take the case? And Taylor's like, I think if I had a vote, I'd say we should. And it's like, what? I like being the lawyer. Also, we learned that her ex-husband did stocks and stuff like that, because it's like, she's like, if it was my ex-husband, he'd tell you all about stocks and stuff like that. He'd know everything. You know, that's all he ever wanted to talk about, and 1,000 different ways of how he can make you money. It's like, yeah, he doesn't really like talking to me unless I wonder why is that, though. I guess the breakup was pretty bad or something like that. Just the fact is that she was like, yeah, he doesn't want to talk to me unless it's about our son. And then Bull's like, make it about your son. And I'm curious how she managed that, but still, it kind of worked out in the end because it ended up helping with the case, because she's very good at what she's done. She's done it like 3 times prior to it. Oh, I mean, 2 times prior to this, but 3 times in total of killing her significant others and end up kind of making away like a bandit life insurance and stuff like that. So there's no evidence. And even Bull being like, is this lady really that like some diabolical mastermind? Can all of us not put our heads together and find a way to charge this lady? And just everyone's just kind of sitting there like, I don't know. It's also interesting too because there's that whole aspect of like, okay, so the reason why they can't use the evidence against her is because 1, she was never charged for the prior 2 crimes. 2, it's a situation, I forgot what the term is that Chunk used, but basically it was like, just because she might have done it in the past doesn't necessarily mean that she did it this time, which is kind of a crazy thing in itself to say. Now, unless I'm misremembering what Chuck said, but I'm pretty sure it was something like that, which I thought was kind of fascinating. I also love the judge in this episode too. Was a little snippy too, because it's like she's like, yeah, I'll give you a little room, Benny. Little is the key word there, so don't push me because you won't like that. And he's like, I forgot what it was he was saying. He was just kind of like, I never, essentially like that. And then later on, she's like, okay, Benny, you're on thin ice and the sun is coming out. You got what I'm saying? And then it's kind of like, later on, the defendant, it's kind of like, her lawyer, it's like objection, and the judge is like, oh, he's going down the river. I'm sure this is almost getting close to right, Mr. Cologne? And he's like, you're right, you're judge. I just like that back and forth between Benny and her. I thought was kind of pretty neat. There was that whole thing at the end too that I thought was kind of fascinating, like how she went about it with everything, like what they ended up learning from Taylor with the whole like shorting stocks. Like I still don't 100% understand how that works. I get a little bit of it. Like basically you go to a broker and you borrow stocks, not buy, but then like the whole situation of like the stocks go down and obviously price. I didn't completely 100% understand it, but like she found a roundabout way to kind of profit from the situation by like knowing exactly when he'd die and just like kind of maximizing essentially her profits in the whole situation. I even love Bull being like, man, no matter what they say, like I always love it when Benny kind of does his thing, and even to the point Marissa got caught up in it, and he's like, so are you going to talk to me? And Marissa's like, all right, yeah, sorry. She's like, I got so caught up in everything. It's like, yep, full scale green all across the board. So that was pretty impressive. It's like, yo, when Benny gets into his bag, like everybody gets distracted because like he put on quite the show, you know, kind of adding into his little bit of theatrics and stuff like that, which is kind of, you know, interesting considering the fact is kind of what went down in this episode. Like I wasn't sure what was going to go down with that when like, oh yeah, Marissa was like, you should check on Benny first. It's like, what's that all about? His dad had passed away. I was like, damn, that's rough, dude. And even Bull, I think Bull being who he is, it's kind of interesting because it seems like, you know, Bull is not the most socially aware person. It's hard to say because sometimes it's like, does he say and do things on purpose because it's just to kind of force people's hands? Because it's like, he's like, are you one of those people who doesn't want to talk and just wants to be left alone? Or are you one of those people who says something like that but really just wants to talk? You know, he's like, I mean, either way, I'm flexible. I can be either one. So, and for him too, it's also a hard thing for Benny because it's like he kind of feels this loneliness because his dad's going, their mom's going. All he has is his sister, and it kind of makes him a little lonely. But Bull's, because he's like, how do you handle all that? And Bull's like, well, I got you, and you got me, buddy. I'm like, oh, that's sweet. It does lead to complicated situations because there's the whole, obviously things between him and Diana are spicing up, but then he runs into Isabel, and it makes things a little harder for him, and it's like he actually calls Marissa and talks about it. He's like, yeah, the fact of the matter is, it's like she's there, she looks so frail, and I want to save her, I always want to save her, and it's like, oh, it's like the ex-wife and everything, there's like a lot of history there, so it just, exes kind of have it, depending on how powerful the relationship is, an ex can kind of stay in your heart for a while. And so part of me felt so bad because I was like, please don't let anything happen between you. It's like, hey, you and Diana, once again, it's that situation of I don't know if they've gone completely monogamous, because the fact of the matter is subsequent times since Diana last popped up, aside from popping up this season, Bull had hooked up with other people in between season 2 and now, so that's why I was kind of I think it was just kind of oh, we're just kind of having fun, and then maybe that all there is to it. I still just kind of feel a little oh, it's cheating, because it seems like you are telling, it seemed especially because last time we saw he was potentially telling her about his condition, so I'm actually surprised that never came up, because I thought with the way things are playing out, before it turned into a Black Widow situation, I thought that was what they were potentially aiming for, the parallels between, because I thought two different things. One, my initial thought was kind of oh, they're making parallels to Bull in his situation, because he kind of had a similar thing, somewhat with Diana, but also at the same time I thought the brother was going to be oh, charge that lady, she had sex with my brother and killed. I thought that was potentially another route the episode was going to go. Neither ended up being the case, but nevertheless. But apparently Bull and Isabel kind of do their thing, and then Bull's just calling, being hey, I'm checking up on you, you haven't gotten back to me, don't tell your brother, or at the very least, if you are going to tell your brother, just tell me first. And he's just call me back. And I forgot what it was he said, but he just kind of hung up the phone. He's like, oh, I'm such an idiot for even saying that. Kind of an awkward moment of just oh, I wish I could take that back. And he ended up telling Marissa, he ended up dancing around it, but he ended up ultimately telling Marissa, and Marissa's just kind of ooh, because he was I should cancel Diana's, trip here, and, because it's also the person that's not talking to me isn't Diana, it's Isabel, and it's because that's a slippery slope, because it's old things is happening with him and Diana, and now you're kind of sliding back towards X. It's just especially because the whole thing of Isabel getting married and moving on, and it seems like that potentially, I should have figured it. I figured as much when Benny was kind of oh yeah, there's kind of things between her and her new husband. He's I try not to get too involved in that. That's kind of their business. So I was oh man. Because I was thinking the entire time, I was please don't kind of get swept up in all this. Because it seemed I said, oh yeah, Isabel called me back. We're going to meet up for dinner. It's kind of he's oh, I got a hot date. I'm oh, don't, boy. She's going to tear you down, in the sense of it's going to crush you a little bit. And it does, because for her, it's I wasn't in the right mind state. I was kind of a little confused, still am. And he's he understands, because it's it was a very vulnerable moment for her, and just probably needed someone to latch onto, especially someone familiar. Just she's don't hate me. He's of course not. I can't hate you. The fact of the matter is, he's just I'm sorry about what happened to your dad. It's just kind of, I think, because for her, it's if I'm drowning, I'll call you, so stop calling me. So it's just, I think, obviously Isabel tries, it was her way of just kind of trying to figure stuff out herself, but Bull kept calling over and over again, so he kind of got swept in the romance of it all. But ultimately, I say, she kind of sets her straight, but then they make out at the end, and it's I honestly don't know where you stand. Is it just a situation of that was a good goodbye kiss, or is that the situation of being anytime you need me, I'm there for you in more way than one? Potentially, I don't know. Which also, once again, it just makes me feel a little sad, because I'm oh, but what about you and Diana? Once again, it's that depends on whether they've really fully gone down the whole monogamous route. But either way, that's definitely interesting. I mean, to be fair, it's not him and Isabel run into each other that often, but they have from time to time. I mean, hell, you literally work with her brother, and that's definitely going to be something they're probably going to try to, get closer, now that they've lost their dad. It's I think this is probably a time siblings probably get even closer, but that's just, a thought process in that. But I'm very interested to see where all this takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.